This story is about another chassid of the Alter Rebbe, whose name was Rebbe the Melamed, how he became a chassid. The story begins with an individual by the name of Rebbe Moshe. He was the one who had a printing press known as the Slavita printing press, and because of him and because of his printing press, hundreds and thousands of Torah Sfarim were spread out throughout the country, which of course made it possible for Torah study to increase. But before he was able to establish it, he had a very hard time. He had a very hard time getting the permit from the government. And the Minister of Education would not give him a permit to establish this printing press, which would only increase and multiply Jewish Sfarim. And he demanded a lot of money, which made it almost impossible to do it. So as a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, he came to the Alter Rebbe to ask him what he can do to get this permit. Alter Rebbe said to him the following: you should travel to the city of Moliv, which is near the river Dnieper. You'll find a Jew by the name of Yisrael the Melamed, and with him you should travel to the city of Vilna, and there you'll find what you're looking for. Even though this is all wrapped in mystery, he saw no connection between the city of Moliv, the city of Vilna, to the Minister of Education. But as a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, with complete Emunas Tzaddikim, he had complete faith that Alter Rebbe is giving him the best way possible for him to accomplish successfully what he wants to. So he traveled to the city of Moliv, and he searched for a Jew whose name was Yisrael the Melamed. Didn't come easy, but eventually he found him and he met with him. This Melamed, the Melamed means a teacher who teaches young children, teaches little children. He was shocked. How could it be that your Rebbe would send you to me? He was not a chassid. And he said, I'm a Melamed. I'm a person who teaches young children, little children, Torah. I had never met with ministers, have nothing to do with diplomatic circles. I don't even know how to communicate with such people. It doesn't make any sense that your Rebbe would send you to someone like me for you to get the permit from the Minister of Education. There's probably a mistake somewhere here. In fact, what are you asking me to do? I should leave the children, stop teaching them, go to the city of Vilna. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, the whole thing is probably on the premise of some wrong information, and on that premise I should leave the children and travel. I'm sorry, I'm not ready to do that. Rebbe Moshe, though, because of his strong emunah in the Alter Rebbe, he was certain, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Alter Rebbe did send him to the right address. He begged and he pleaded and he explained to him that this is not only a matter of personal livelihoods, this is something which is important to all of the Jewish people. Because if he's able to establish a printing press, he'll be able to print Torah Sfarim, which would make it possible for more Jews to study Torah. And if God forbid they can't print it, this would be a hindrance to the spreading of Torah. And he finally convinced him. He promised him that he would give him a lot of money for his time and effort, and he finally convinced him to travel with him to the city of Vilna. When they came to the city of Vilna, they approached Rebbe Meir Rafov. Rebbe Meir Rafov, as we related the story in the previous lesson, he was the leader in the community of Vilna. The story in the previous lesson was how he became a chassid. When this story happened, he was already a chassid. And being that he was the head of the community, and he did deal with governments, with ministers, and he was familiar with these circles, he probably, more than anyone else, would know who to turn to. But the Rebbe Rafov was also surprised. Why would the Alter Rebbe send you to Vilna? The place to find the Minister of Education is in Petersburg. Why would the Minister of Education be in Vilna? But, again, as a chassid, the Alter Rebbe sent you here. There's no doubt the Alter Rebbe knows that this is the place where you will find what you're looking for. But being that we don't know what to do, let's just be here, and I'm sure that within a short period of time, we'll find out what the Alter Rebbe meant. One of the days, the three of them went out and were walking together in the streets of Vilna. In a certain street, they noticed there was a wagon that was traveling by, and a minister was sitting in that wagon, and as he traveled by, he slowed down, and he was staring very strongly at Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed. Later on the way back, when this wagon was coming back, again he slowed down, and he saw that the minister in the wagon was staring at Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed. Reb Meir Fols, who was not intimidated by ministers because of his position in the city, walked over to the minister and he said, I see that, Your Honor, you're looking and staring at this person. I have a feeling that you want to ask him something. Is that true? And if yes, just tell me, and I can ask him to walk over to you. So he said, it's true. I do want to speak to this person. Please tell him to see me tomorrow at 12 o'clock in my hotel room. In fact, here is a card where this will be his, this will allow him to come to me and let him just present this card, and they'll bring him to my room. But ask him to be on time because I'll be waiting specifically for him. The following day, Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed went to the hotel and he met this minister. The minister said to him, tell me, from which city are you? And he said, I'm from the city of Moliv. He said, no, you're from the city of Shklov. And the Melamed said to him, you know, that's true. I was born in Shklov. But it's more than 20 years that I left Shklov, and now I'm in the city of Moliv. Then the minister continued and said, do you recognize me? And Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed said, no. So tell me, do you remember this incident that happened in your city? More than 20 years ago, there was a young man that because he was not conducting himself properly, in the proper Torah way, the community punished him with a standard punishment that they gave in those days. The punishment was that they tied him up in the hallway of the shul, and everybody that came to shul to daven walked by and spit in front of him. And the purpose was, naturally, to degrade him, and in that way, it was used as a method to discourage people from doing things that are wrong. Naturally, I was destroyed because of this, but there was a young man who had Rahmanah to me, had pity on me, and when nobody was watching, he went and untied the ropes. And through this I was saved. I ran away from the city of Shklov, and I went to the city of Petersburg. And over there, I went into one of the schools, one of the universities. And I succeeded, and I was promoted from one level to another level. And in the end, he said he actually converted to Christianity. And he became the Minister of Education. And because of some important business that I have, I'm here in Vilna. Now do you remember me? Because you're that young man who untied me. And of course, Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed did remember the story. And he said, I want you to know that I'm forever grateful to you for doing this to me, for helping me. Now, besides the fact that I have this position of being Minister of Education, I'm also very wealthy. And please, tell me in what way I can help you. I can help you with money or any other way, using my influence. I just feel this, all the years I felt there's something that I have to do to repay you. When Rebbe Yisrael the Melamed heard this, he was so choked with emotion, he couldn't even speak. And so finally he told him his story, how the Alter Rebbe sent him to get the permits from the Minister of Education, which made absolutely no sense. And now he sees the connection. Of course, this had an effect on the minister himself, and he said, I see that your Rebbe is really a great man. He's like a prophet. And he knew that I will be passing by this city, and he knew that you know me, and he put the two of us together. And he said to him, listen, I suggest that you come to live in my city in Petersburg. I'll take good care of you. I'll give you a very good job. Just come with me. Of course, the Malamed had no intention of living in a city like Petersburg. He thanked him very much, and he just said to him that the greatest favor you can do for me is give me the permit for the printing of the Svarim. And of course, as they were there in that room, he wrote out to him personally a check of 2,000 ruble, which was an enormous sum in those days. And he promised that he would come visit him in the city of Moliv, and he would see in what ways he can help him there. No doubt that Rebbe Yisrael, the Malamed, rushed back to the house where he met Reb Moshe, and he met the Reb Meir Rafal. He showed them the check of the 2,000 ruble. It goes without saying that he became a fiery chassid of the Alter Rebbe. This story, as well as a number of stories which we told before, is based on the fact that a chassid has a very strong Emunas Tzaddikim, strong Emunah and faith in the Rebbe, that when the Rebbe says something, he has no doubts, no hesitations. He is certain, 100% certain, that as the Rebbe says, that's the way it will be. And what everything the Rebbe does is 100% emes. It's maybe important to note at this point that this happens to be one of the basic principles of the teachings of Chassidus in general, and also what the Alter Rebbe gave over and taught his Chassidim. The union of Emunas Tzaddikim, how strong this has to be. And there's a story of the Alter Rebbe, or something the Alter Rebbe told his grandson, who later became the third Rebbe of Chabad, the Tzemach Tzedek, about the important lesson of how a chassid should have complete faith and trust in his Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe said that this is what he was told by the Mezritcher Maggid. Everyone knows that the Baal Shem Tov introduced the whole idea of being mekarev, of showing tremendous respect and love to the Anoshim Pshutim, to the simple Jews. Although they're simple, but nevertheless they're God-fearing, and they have so much truth and so much depth in their hearts. The Mezritcher Maggid said that at that time the Baal Shem Tov had many students who were the Chavraya Kadisha, students who were themselves giants in Torah, giants in Chassidus. They were great Tzaddikim, and of course they came to the Baal Shem Tov to hear the deep teachings of Chassidus the Baal Shem Tov taught. There was one thing though which they had a hard time dealing with. That was to see how much attention and how much love and affection the Baal Shem Tov shows to these simple people. In fact, many times the Baal Shem Tov would send one of these great students, one of these tzaddikim, and tell them to go to one of the simple Jews who were simple and illiterate, and to learn from them how to serve Hashem. Whether it was to learn how to serve Hashem with bitachon, with emunah, with Avos Yisrael and other things, but he would send the tzaddikim to go to the simple Jew to learn from them. And then I had a very hard time dealing with this. One time, though, something happened which shook up all of the Chavraya Kadisha and changed everything forever. One Shabbos, it was one of the Shabbosim during the summer, a lot of guests came to the Baal Shem Tov for Shabbos, and many of them were the Anoshim Pshutim, these simple Chassidim, who were simple and some of them even illiterate. Many of them were farmers, shoemakers, tailors, gardeners, and they all came to participate in the Shabbos with the Baal Shem Tov. Friday night, they were all by the table, and that Friday night the Baal Shem Tov showed exceptional attention and affection to these simple chassidim. To one of them, the Baal Shem Tov gave him the leftover wine from his personal kos that he should drink it. Another one, the Baal Shem Tov gave him his personal kos that chassid should make kiddush on it. To some of them, the Baal Shem Tov gave from his personal bread. Some of them, he gave them pieces of his fish and his meat from his plate, and other things similar to this. And this surprised the Chavraya Kadisha very much. For the second Suda, by day, these guests knew that they weren't permitted to participate in that Suda. That Suda was reserved exclusively for the Chavraya Kadisha. So therefore, after they finished their Suda, they gathered together in the shul. They weren't learned, so they only did whatever they can do, and that is, they all began to say Tehillim. When the Baal Shem Tov sat down with his students, the Chavraya Kadisha, these were the selected students, these were the students who were all great spiritual giants and tzaddikim. He arranged them by the table. The seating arrangement was specifically arranged by the Baal Shem Tov himself, where each one should sit. And after sitting by the table for a while, the Baal Shem Tov said words of Torah, Chassidus, and everybody was in a very high state, enjoying the Shabbos table and enjoying the Torah that the Baal Shem Tov was giving over. After this, they began to sing Nigunim. And when the Chavraya Kadisha saw that the Baal Shem Tov is in high spirits, this gave them great joy and great pleasure. And they were sitting and thinking to themselves how fortunate they are that Hashem gave them the opportunity to be one of the students of the Holy Baal Shem Tov. However, some of the Chavraya Kadisha were sitting and thinking to themselves, now it's really very good. But before, when all these simple people were here, it wasn't so great. These are people, they don't understand what the Baal Shem Tov is saying, and their being here was just an interference. And again, they began to think to themselves, why does the Baal Shem Tov pay so much attention to them? Why does the Baal Shem Tov show them so much affection? He gives them from his wine, he gives them his becher. They're all such simple people, there's nothing special to them. And while they had these thoughts in their mind, they suddenly noted that the face of the Baal Shem Tov became very serious. And the Baal Shem Tov went into a very deep concentration. And then he began to say words of Torah. Sholem, Sholem, L'Arachik V'L'Akorev. And the Baal Shem Tov said, the Chazal tell us, based on this pasuk, Mokim Sheba V'Tshuva Oimdim, Tzaddikim Gemurim Ein Oimdim Sham. That in the place where a Baal Tshuva stands, the Tzaddik Gomer cannot stand in that place. In other words, a Baal Tshuva stands higher than a Tzaddik Gomer. And the Baal Shem Tov explained how there are two ways of serving Hashem. One is the way of a Tzaddik, and the other is the Avodah of a Baal Tshuva. And the Baal Shem Tov concluded that the Anoshim Pshutim, these simple people, the way they serve Hashem is similar to the way of the Baalei Tshuva, because they always feel subdued, humble, they're full of feelings of regret and remorse about their lack of knowledge and how much they're lacking in their education. When the Baal Shem Tov finished these words of Torah, they began to sing various nigunim. Those students of the Chavraya Kadisha that were thinking before about they can't understand why the Baal Shem Tov shows them so much attention, they realized that the Baal Shem Tov read their mind. The Baal Shem Tov knew what they were thinking, and because of their thoughts, the Baal Shem Tov said these words of Torah. And that was his answer to them. that you should know that these simple chassidim, in a certain way, their avodah is even greater than tzaddikim gemurim, complete tzaddikim. The Baal Shem Tov continued to be in very deep concentration, and when they finished singing, he opened his eyes, looked around in the faces of all the Chavraya Kadisha, and he said, every one of the Chavraya Kadisha should put his right hand on the shoulder of the one that's sitting next to him. And in a way that all the students sitting around the table were now connected like a chain. The Baal Shem Tov himself, who was sitting at the head of the table, told them to sing specific nigunim as they sat there with their hands on each other's shoulders. And when they finished singing, he told them to close their eyes, and they shouldn't open their eyes until he'll tell them to do so. And the Baal Shem Tov himself put his two holy hands on the Talmidim sitting next to him. He put his right hand on the shoulder of the Talmud sitting on his right side, and he put his left hand on the Talmud sitting on his left side. Suddenly, all of us students heard voices that were singing. The words that they were saying were words of Tehillim, but it was such an incredible outpour of emotion. It was so sweet, and it was so deep. It was overwhelming. The Chavraya Kadisha was sitting there and listening to the words of Tehillim. Their eyes were closed, but there were tears streaming from their eyes, and their hearts were broken from the singing that they heard. And every one of the Chavraya Kadisha was saying to themselves, halavai, we should have the privilege to be able to serve Hashem with such depth and with such outpour of emotion as we hear in these voices. But they had no idea what these voices were and where they were coming from. The Baal Shem Tov then took his hands off the shoulders of the two students sitting next to him, and at that moment, they could no longer hear the voices. Baal Shem Tov told them to open their eyes, and then he instructed which nigunim they should sing. Mezritcher Maggid said that when I heard those voices singing, I had such an outpour of emotion, such an outpour of my soul, that I never ever felt anything like it. I can say that my shoes were saturated with the sweat and tears of tshuva that came from the depth of my heart. When the Baal Shem Tov stopped singing, the entire room was totally silent. The Baal Shem Tov was still in deep concentration. And then he opened his holy eyes and he said, the song that you heard were actually the singing of the simple Anoshim Pshutim in the other room saying Tehillim from the depth of their heart with pure faith. And then the Baal Shem Tov explained to them that you, Talmidim, even though you're very holy and you're great Tzaddikim, but you don't really have a real, truthful understanding of who these simple people are. And only Hashem himself recognized the truth of the Tehillim that comes from the mouths of these simple people. The Alter Rebbe, when he repeated the story to the Tzemach Tzedek, told him that my Rebbe, the Mezritcher Maggid, said, for a long time, I was in deep pain from the fact that I was Maharach Rabbi. If I had any thoughts, any doubts about my Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov. And that bothered me very much. Why didn't I have the complete trust and faith? True, now that I heard what it sounds like, now that I heard what the Tehillim sounds like, I realize and recognize myself how great they really are. But why couldn't I just trust and have faith in the Baal Shem Tov? And I tried to do many things, he said, to correct it. Certain tikkunim as tshuva for this. and I couldn't really calm myself why I was Maharach Rabbi. One night, he saw something, and that calmed him down. And the Alter Rebbe never told the Tzemach Tzedek what it was that he saw until about a week before the Histalkus of the Alter Rebbe. And then he told him that the Mezritcher Maggid said that as he was ascending to the higher spiritual planes and the higher spiritual worlds, and he was coming back, he passed through one of the chambers of Gan Eden. And there he saw children sitting and learning Chumash, and the one who was teaching them was Moshe Rabbeinu himself, sitting at the head of the table. And the children were learning Parshas Lech Lecha. And one of the children was reading out loud the pasuk, Vayipel Avraham al Panav Vayitzchak, Vayemer Belibay, Halaben Meir Shana Yivoled, V'Misara Habas Tishim Shana Teleit. This is the pasuk where Hashem promised Avram Avinu that he's going to have a child, and Avram Avinu was laughing in his heart and saying, is it impossible for me at the age of 100 to give birth, and Sarah at the age of 90 to give birth to a child? And Moshe Rabbeinu said, being that this is written in Chumash, Ein mikar yetzim edei pshutei, how can you understand that Avram Avinu should have such doubts? If Hashem said he's going to have a child, he should have been certain. And the answer is, it's because of the guf, the physical body. Although it's also Kaddish, it's holy, but it's still flesh. And this story calmed down the Mezritcher Maggid. And the Rebbe explained, this is in a Sicha, Chelik Hei Lekutis Sichas, of Lech Lecha, that this should not be misinterpreted, that Chas v'Sholom, a tzaddik of this caliber, like the Mezritcher Maggid, could have inappropriate thoughts because of his guf. Absolutely not. The tzaddik in this caliber, like the Maggid, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, these are tzaddikim that have no connection to sin or to anything inappropriate, not because of the neshama and not because of the guf. As Moshe Rabbeinu himself said, the guf is also holy. So they're only able to experience thoughts that are pure holiness. It only means that because of the guf, something could happen that on the surface could be interpreted and could be seen and perceived as something negative. This is not the place where this can be explained in detail. This can be looked up in the Sikha itself. But this is what comes down to Mezritcher Maggid. So we see from here, this is one of the most basic principles, basic lessons that the Alter Rebbe taught, which he brought from the Mezritcher Maggid, the importance of how a chassid has to have complete emunah and faith in the Rebbe, Emunas Tzaddikim. And that's the basis for the stories that we told previously of how the chassidim had complete emunah in the Rebbe, whether it's words of Torah that the Rebbe said, or a promise about the future that the Rebbe said, or a blessing that the Rebbe gives, that a chassid doesn't have a doubt in his mind that what the Rebbe says is emes, and that's the way it'll be.